Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, our mission is, well, it's laser focused on keeping players safe. And we want to make sure that you, the novice USA hockey official, have the foundation you need to enforce some of the most critical rules in the book.
And that foundation is, it's entirely built on player safety. For new officials, the rules we're covering today, Rule 603 for boarding, Rule 608 checking from behind, and the whole body checking standard of play, this is really where the rubber meets the road.
These are the big ones.
They are. These are the infractions that absolutely prioritize USA Hockey's safety mandate above everything else.
We've got the 2025-2029 official rules and casebook here to guide us. And I think before we even get into the specifics, the big picture for you, the referee, is accountability. You have to strictly enforce the action you see, the illegal conduct, and not just, react to an injury or the score of the game.
That is the ultimate test of an official, right there. The philosophy requires you to penalize the dangerous act itself. So whether the player bounces off the boards totally unscathed or ends up injured, the penalty decision has to be the same.
Because safety comes first.
Safety has to be prioritized over the game situation, period.
Okay, let's unpack that core philosophy a bit because that's probably the hardest part for a novice official. If we are mandated to penalize the action, we first have to define what it means for a player to be vulnerable or defenseless. I mean, how do we see a player's mental state in real time?
That definition is absolutely crucial, and it goes way beyond just looking at a player's physical position. A vulnerable or defenseless skater is one who is fundamentally unaware, unprepared, or unsuspecting of impending competitive contact, or a body check.
So it's not just about hitting someone who's facing the boards. If a player has just ripped a hard pass or they're focused entirely on the puck at their feet, they are mentally unprepared for that contact.
Precisely. Their focus is completely elsewhere. And when you see contact delivered to a player in that mental state, the check immediately becomes more dangerous, regardless of, the actual severity of the contact.
Okay.
That concept of vulnerability is the thread that just runs through everything. Boarding, checking from behind, it's critical for evaluating all physical play.
This leads us directly into the rules governing body checking. We should probably start with competitive contact categories, so those age levels where body checking is not permitted. How do you, the official, distinguish between what's legal competitive contact and what's illegal body contact when everyone is just battling for the puck?
Legal competitive contact happens when two players are focused entirely on gaining possession of the puck and maintaining an established position.
Like in front of the net.
Exactly. Think two players leaning on each other along the boards or battling for that space in front of the net. They're both going for the puck, and the physical contact is really just incidental to that pursuit. It's unavoidable friction.
And here's where the confusion for the novice official usually starts. What's the overt action that crosses the line into illegality in these no-checking categories?
The line is crossed when you see deliberate physical contact delivered with absolutely no reasonable effort to legally play the puck. The rulebook gives us some really clear examples here. If you see a player throw an overt hip check or a shoulder or even forearm contact with the sole purpose of forcing an opponent off the puck, not gaining possession, that is illegal. Has to be penalized.
So it's the difference between establishing your position and intentionally throwing a bump just to send a message. If the puck is 2 feet away and you put your shoulder into a player, that's a penalty.
Exactly. Intent matters. If the intent is purely to physically engage or displace the opponent and not to gain control of the puck, you have to blow the whistle.
Now let's flip the scenario. Let's move to the age levels where body checking is permitted. Even here, the definition of a legal body check is incredibly strict. Can you give us the definitive checklist for what's allowed?
Sure. It's basically a 4-point checklist that has to be met all at once. 1, it must be intentional physical contact. 2, it must be delivered from the front, diagonally from the front, or straight from the side.
Never from behind.
Never. 3, it must be directed at an opponent who is in control of the puck. And 4, it has to be delivered with the trunk of the body, so we're talking hips and shoulders, with contact above the opponent's knees and at or below their shoulders.
That emphasis on the trunk is so critical because it immediately disqualifies using hands, elbows, or sticks, right? Which would automatically throw it into roughing or charging territory, even in a checking league.
Absolutely. The moment an extremity is used as the principal point of contact, you have an illegal check. But I want to go back to point 3, checking an opponent who is in control of the puck. That requirement often leads to the most penalized actions, the late hits.
Let's dive into that. I know a lot of novice officials hear coaches or players yelling about finishing the check. Hi, if body checking is allowed, why is a late check illegal? Isn't that just part of the game?
Well, it's a penalty, because the objective of a legal check is to gain possession of the puck. It's not to punish or intimidate. The moment that player releases the puck, whether it's a shot, a pass, or they just lose control, they are no longer the focal point of that check. Delivering a late avoidable check is an unnecessary and often a very dangerous physical act.
So you have to anticipate that moment the puck leaves the stick. If the contact happens even a half a second after the puck is gone, that player is now vulnerable, their focus has shifted, and that makes it an interference or a roughing call.
Correct. And likewise, you have to penalize any player who intentionally engages with an opponent who does not have possession of the puck, or if they anticipate possession but make contact before it's established. Possession has to be cleared before the check is delivered.
Okay, transitioning now to specific rules that carry really severe penalties because of the risk involved. Let's talk Rule 603, boarding. This one often involves high speed and hard barriers. What's the core definition?
Boarding occurs when a player is violently thrown into the boards. And because this rule can result in, broken collarbones, concussions, it requires you to exercise judgment based on three critical criteria. And this is where the call gets subjective and sometimes difficult.
I'm going to need some help defining those three subjective factors. What are they, and how do I apply them when the action is moving so fast?
The three critical factors are: 1, the distance the player traveled prior to the contact; 2, the vulnerability of the opponent; and 3, the degree of force that was used.
Okay, let's zero in on distance traveled. If I'm positioned on the blue line, how am I supposed to quantify distance traveled?
That's where your experience comes in, but you have to think practically. If a player is checked from a standstill, or maybe just one stride away from the boards, the distance traveled is minimal. The force is absorbed pretty quickly. But if that player is checked from 3 or 4 strides out, that speed is converted into maximum force on impact.
So the greater the distance, the more likely it is to be a major penalty.
The greater the distance traveled, the higher the likelihood of a major, or even a match penalty, yes.
So if the check sends them flying from across the hash marks right into the boards, that's an automatic escalation because of that distance and force combination. And the penalty options reflect this severity.
Absolutely. Boarding is not a simple minor penalty. The minimum penalty is a minor penalty plus a misconduct penalty. Now, if you judge that the action recklessly endangered the opponent, maybe due to high speed, extreme vulnerability, or that significant distance traveled, you must assess a major penalty plus a game misconduct. And the match penalty option is always on the table for actions deemed to be reckless endangerment.
That escalation from a minor plus misconduct all the way up to a match penalty, it really underscores that this is about player welfare first. We're not looking for retaliation, we're looking for accountability.
And this ties right back to proactive officiating. Remember that you have to stop play if the puck is trapped along the boards, and a third player enters the corner with the intent to deliver a check, especially to an already vulnerable or defenseless opponent. You are preventing the boarding or roughing before it even happens.
That's a fantastic preventative measure. What about that situation where a player is already tangled up with 2 opponents?
If a player delivers a check to an opponent who is already physically engaged with 2 or more players, that player is, in effect, targeting a defenseless opponent who is pinned or can't move. That's penalized as roughing under Rule 640. It's an unnecessary act of aggression against someone who just can't defend themselves.
Let's move to checking from behind, Rule 608. Given its reputation, I'm guessing this infraction carries the most stringent penalty structure of all.
It does. It absolutely does, because the risk of a catastrophic neck or spine injury is inherent when contact is made from the rear and drives a player into the boards or the goal frame. Checking from behind is defined as doing just that, driving a player who is unaware of the impending contact from behind directly into that barrier.
The inherent vulnerability of the receiver is what makes this call so serious. They can't brace themselves.
Exactly, and the penalty structure for Rule 608 reflects that inherent danger. The minimum call is a minor penalty plus a misconduct penalty. However, in almost every serious scenario, the official must assess a major penalty plus a game misconduct penalty, especially if the player is recklessly endangered, for example, resulting in head-first contact with the boards.
So when a ref sees a check from behind, their mind should immediately be thinking about sending that player off for the rest of the game, not just for 2 minutes in the box.
That's the default mindset. This is a severe penalty standard because the receiving player has zero capacity for defense or preparedness. When you see contact from behind that drives the player into the barrier, that high standard applies. And just like boarding, the match penalty option is available for actions deemed reckless endangerment. It gives the official the necessary flexibility to address true malice or just extreme carelessness.
This has been a heavy dive into the most serious safety infractions. So what's the final takeaway for you, the novice official, as you prepare to step onto the ice?
Remember that these three areas, body checking standards, Rule 603 on boarding, and Rule 608 on checking from behind, they are foundational mandates for maintaining the safety culture of USA hockey. Consistent officiating here means you must penalize the action, not the outcome. And you have to actively recognize when a player is in a vulnerable or defenseless position.
It's all about accountability for the action, but, that accountability doesn't stop when the game ends.
That's right. Your responsibility extends past the final whistle, especially when we talk about the most severe penalties, like the match penalty or a major in-game misconduct. For any match penalty assessed, which is always an option in these severe safety fouls, the official is required to file an incident report within 24 hours.
Why is that incident report so critical? I mean, isn't the penalty on the score sheet enough?
It's the difference between a simple time penalty and initiating due process. The incident report is the official's detailed account of the infraction. It allows the league or the governing body to determine further suspension or disciplinary action. You aren't just assessing time. You are the first step in the entire disciplinary system that upholds the integrity and safety of the game long term.
That really grounds the importance of making the right call under pressure. Your judgment on the ice is directly linked to player discipline weeks later.
Precisely. Always remember that the required filing of those incident reports for the most severe infractions underscores that the official's duty to player safety and governance extends far beyond the final buzzer. Your decision to call a major or a match penalty is the foundation of protecting the players and the future integrity of the sport.